So this, for anybody who joined us last year for the in-person summit, this presentation is going to be a refresher for you. A lot of it is the exact same information, but we have a large new audience with us this year, and I kind of think of the scene from Chef where, is it Richard Gere? Someone help me out. Someone throw me a bone. Is talking to oh gosh, who's the chef in Chef? His name, whatever. But he says, how would you feel if you went to go see the Stones and they didn't play Satisfaction? Would you be happy? No, you'd burn the place to the ground. And that's kind of how I felt about this this presentation. Was this is one of our greatest hits. So I wanted to be able to present that to you guys today. So the genesis of this talk was really a conversation that I had with Mike and Jason, and giving them some slack about these sous vide forums, because there's a lot of this muscle, that muscle, meat. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm an occasional carnivore at best. I eat steak twice a year. My family and I, we have this tradition where we get together for the steak dinner once a year, and it's that thing. And then the other one is whenever I get invited somewhere and someone says, come over, I'm making steaks. And that's about it. It's just not something that I enjoy. I love cooking vegetables. I love eating vegetables. I love grains, legumes, cocktails, all of that. And really that's where I put a lot of my sous vide knowledge is into those food groups beyond steak and eggs. So that was kind of the genesis behind this conversation was, can we get some conversation going around other than steak and eggs? So sous vide is an immensely versatile cooking technique applicable to a wide variety of foods and beverages, but many chefs and enthusiasts alike have yet to explore its full potential. So leading into the summit last year, I said to AJ, who you guys will hear from tonight, I believe it is, I said, do you ever feel like you're about to walk into a room and tell people things they already know? And she said, no. And that kind of put me at ease, because I feel like the home sous vide enthusiast crowd is far more adventurous than the professional chef sous vide cooking crowd. With chefs, there's sort of this, and I'll touch on this more in my pro track. It's really like, I know how to cook a steak, and that's kind of it. That's kind of where it stops. But home sous vide enthusiasts, I feel, they're ready to cook. They're ready to do ice cream. They're ready to do pie filling or whatever it is. They're ready. You guys are excited about the technique and want to see all the things that you can do with it. So with that said, I'm gonna touch on every food group that I use sous vide for, and then happy to answer any questions about anything. Jason will field questions in the middle of this, or prompt me if I've got any a question to go. But here we go. So all of these slides will have some sort of a time and temperature combination on them. Now, I'm not saying that this is the perfect way to cook this vegetable, or let's say every vegetable within this category, or what food within this category, whatever it is, but it's a really good starting point. So when you look at these, don't take them as gospel. Take it for a really good starting point. And I hear a lot of times, and I read in these comments on these forums that you guys are in, is I don't like that. I don't like that. Well, I like this 0.1 degrees more. That's great. Do that. Do that. Do what you prefer, but use these as a jumping off point from a very knowledgeable source. So root vegetables, firm, tender, puree. So the difference here between firm and tender is really 1 degree, and the difference exists because at 85 C, pectin begins to denature. If you cook vegetables at 85, that's great, but know that they may get too soft after some time. Puree, 90 C for an hour and 15 minutes. It might happen a little bit sooner, but that 90 C mark, we like to cook things for as long as we have to, but as short as we can. So when you're pureeing things, ride the lightning. Set the circulator as high as it goes, and cook it till it's done. The reason that you would do that is that you're able to cook in small amounts of liquid and really enhance the flavor of the vegetable or whatever it is that you're cooking. The first time I saw people cooking purees sous vide in one restaurant here in Chicago that's sadly closing, Blackbird, very famous restaurant that's been here for a long time. When I had stage there 10, 11 years ago, whatever it was, they were cooking all of their purees exclusively sous vide. And I'm like, I thought the point of sous vide was to get this very exact result. And, you know, why on earth would you just cook something if you're going to put it in a blender? Why would you even bother? And because it really enhances the flavor of that vegetable and produces a really beautiful puree. So cooking root vegetables sous vide ensures a crisp, tender texture, retains vibrant colors, no loss of flavor, higher nutrient content. So let's talk about those right there. When you cook, let's say, carrots in a pot of boiling water, what color is that water when you're done? It's orange. You've lost something. You've lost color, you've lost flavor, you've lost nutrients. By cooking it in a bag, everything is contained. Batch cooking enables you to cook multiple vegetables at once. You can cook your beets in the same bath that you can cook your carrots. You can cook your carrots in the same bath as your parsnips. You can cook your carrots, your beets, and your parsnips all at once, which eliminates multiple blanch pots or multiple cooking methods and streamlines that process. And vegetables don't dry out, unlike with roasting. So if you want to cook your vegetables sous vide and then finish them in a hot pan, you're going to end up with a very similar result, but with a higher yield, and they won't be dry and leathery. Green vegetables. Now, those of you who paid attention very closely to the time and temperature on the previous slide will notice that our textures are reversed. We're starting off at soft, and then we're going to tender, and then this, what I like to call snappy. So what you also see is that the times have reversed here, right? So we're cooking very hot for let's say snappy asparagus or some snappy Brussels sprouts. We're cooking at 90°C, very hot for a very short time, only 7 minutes. And that's, again, not across everything. You'll have to do some trial and error, but that's a good starting point, let's say. Same thing with the soft and with the tender. We're decreasing the temperature, but we're increasing the time. Same rules apply here. You get an excellent texture, vibrant colors, better flavor, better nutrient content. It would be advisable if you're cooking something cruciferous to remove it from the bag after it's been chilled, because cruciferous vegetables, if you don't know what that word means, it's vegetables that are kind of stinky. Think of a Brussels sprout, think of daikon, think of radish, things like that. And they will kind of give the food a stinky taste in addition to that aroma if it's contained in the bag for too long. So after we're done chilling them, cut the bag open and we place them in a lidded container with a paper towel. And the vegetables don't become waterlogged. So after you blanch green vegetables, after you cook them in hot water, you put them in ice water to cool them down. But if you leave them in the ice water for too long, a couple things can happen. One is they can kind of become waterlogged. And also any salt that you had in your salted boiling water when you had blanched them can now be lost through osmosis back into the cold water. So you were going upstream and now you're going downstream. So pickles. I do a lot of pickling.
Chef, we have a question for you. You told me to butt in and ask you. So
sure, I hope I have an answer.
Maxim Weinstein says, question for the chef. Do you prefer to season the vegetables before sealing, or does the salt mess up the texture?
No, I'd season them. Toss them in a little bit of oil or melted butter, whatever it is, or fat of any kind, an animal fat if you like. Whatever you want, any sort of fat, and then season them up and bag them. Yeah, you're good. So pickles, I make a ton of pickles. Every summer, every spring, every fall, I do a round of pickling with whatever I can get my hands on. My pantry is loaded with pickles. I love pickles. And using a boiling water bath canner setup sucks. It sucks for a couple reasons. One, when you go to pull out the jars, inevitably you drop half of them and they slam on the bottom of the pot. You hope they don't break. Then you get boiling water that splashes everywhere. So it's just kind of like a cumbersome setup. And you can also overcook your product. It's way hotter than it needs to be. Okay, so this pickling method was spearheaded by Chef Steps. 60C at 2.5 hours for a quart mason jar. Now you can use this time and temperature in a smaller mason jar. However, their calculation of death of log reduction of pathogens was based on a quart, and they didn't do anything under that. But you'll be good to go, and you're at 60C, so you're not going to overcook anything anyway. So if you got 8 ounces, quarts, pints, whatever it is, throw them all in the same bath. You're going to be good to go. The product is pasteurized and is shelf stable, which I think is awesome because I have limited refrigerator space and I can keep all of these things on my shelf in my pantry. Now there are a few caveats. You want to use a culinary vinegar of at least 5% acidity. Most culinary vinegars or vinegars you're going to find readily available at your supermarket are 5% or greater acidity. Just read the label, check it out. You'll be good. The reason that this works is that food pathogens can't grow below a pH of 4, and that pasteurizing the pickles at 60C kills the pathogens that can grow below a pH of 4.6. But the recipe should be at least 40% vinegar by weight to all of the ingredients. Fruit. Cooking fruit sous vide is awesome. For a warm, supple texture, or cooking rhubarb, 62C at 25 minutes is something I really, really like. Cooking something tender, 83C for an hour, that's what I prefer to cook my apples at. And if you're gonna cook something for a puree, again, we crank the temperature up and cook it for as short as we possibly can. We like to add syrups to our fruit. It'll give it some depth. Cooking fruit by itself is great, but adding some spices in there really makes it sing. And you can retherm product. You can retherm something like a poached pear, a poached peach, poached apples, whatever it is, at a low temperature, and you're going to ensure that it won't be mushy. Fruit is very delicate. It can get away from you pretty quickly and turn to mush if you're not careful. With sous vide, that's just not going to happen. Custards. We break custards into 2 categories: set and fluid. Set being something like a pot de creme, creme brulee, creme caramel, something in like that. Fluid would be something like a sabayon, creme anglaise, ice cream base, which is creme anglaise, but something like that. So we determine if it's set or fluid. You can cook both in a jar or a bag. If you set it in a bag, it's going to kind of end up with a weird texture at the end, but be my guest.
We have a clarification for you, Dave. Lauren wants to know, does retherm mean reheat in sous vide?
Yes. For the intents and purpose of this conversation, yes.
Thank you.
Don't let me over-answer questions. I only have 30 minutes. Product is pasteurized as part of the cooking process, so they have a great shelf life. If you have a strong cold chain, you'll be good to go. A creme brulee cooked sous vide is going to last you quite a while, but let's be honest, who's letting creme brulee sit around that long? Creme brulee sous vide is fantastic. It has a liquid velvet texture. It's so good. If you haven't cooked, if you really want to impress somebody with something super simple, cook creme brulee sous vide. It's absolutely fantastic. Dried beans. Dried beans I have a ton of them in my pantry, and sous vide is pretty much the only way that I cook them at this point. Now, 90C for 4.5 hours, that's going to get you there most of the time. There are beans that cook a lot faster at that temperature. If somebody really wants to twist my arm, you can get a hold of me through the summit or email me through work or whatever it is. Get a hold of me however you may, and I can give you the list. But 4.5 hours, 90C is going to get you there most of the time. Notably, I really cook black beans and garbanzo beans at this time and temperature, and I'm really happy with the result. When you cook beans sous vide, you don't get any blowouts. We recommend using a 1% salt solution, so 1% to the weight of the water. So if it was 100 grams of water, 1 gram of salt. Make sense? And you can cook them in jars or bags, but we do recommend that you pre-soak the beans overnight, just as you would if you were cooking them on a stovetop or in an oven or something like that. Lentils. Jason, I'm sure will chime in here, but everybody,
so good,
right? I got on my soapbox last year about sous vide lentils, and it was really Cuisine Solutions product that like opened my eyes. It was sort of like a shock to the system. It's like caviar, and I love caviar. When you cook lentils sous vide, the texture is like nothing you've ever had. They're perfectly textured beluga and puy lentils. They have a thicker exterior, and the insides will literally just pop, but they'll all be perfectly cooked. Now you could cook a red lentil or a yellow lentil or any other sort of lentil, but you'll probably get a dull texture at 90°C or an hour. You would have to cook them less to make them a little bit more toothsome. But beluga lentils, get some, use a 1% salt solution, 90°C for an hour. It'll change your life. Grains such as farro or barley work really well. I love cooking grains sous vide. There are some that work well, some that don't, so I didn't really include them on a slide here. But farro and barley sous vide are also amazing. I cook farro 4-to-1 with some stock, and cook them at 90°C for about an hour and 15 minutes. Perfect texture farro. Great for salads, great for farroto. You can pour it out of there, whip it with some butter. It's gonna be good. Polenta. Okay, let me tell you my gripes with polenta.
One more clarification before we hear your polenta rant.
Sure.
Maxim wants to know, so the 1% saline solution is in the bag, just enough to cover?
Yeah, so you would keep any ratio that you would normally use. If you do something 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1, whatever it is, yeah, in the bag, and just make sure it's 1% salt to the weight of the water is all it is.
Thanks.
So again, if it's 100 grams of water, 1 gram of salt, or stock, or whatever it is. So my polenta rant. So a restaurant that I worked at, we had polenta on the menu, and I have watched. I was doing some work with grits for a different project, and Sean Brock said the same thing. They had a rule in their kitchen, same rule that was in our kitchen. If you look at it, you have to stir it, right? Because polenta, as it's cooking on the stove, it wants to scorch. It has this need to scorch. It's like it's alive and it just wants to do everything against you to catch to the bottom of that pan. So every time you walk past it, you would take a spatula, wipe down the sides, whip across the bottom to make sure nothing was sticking, wipe down the sides, and be on your merry way. It's annoying. I have other things to do. So we cook polenta at 90°C for 2 hours, a coarse grain polenta. And we just cook it in a bag and then dump it out, whip it with some butter and some mascarpone, and be done with it. It will be a little bit lumpy. It will kind of clump together a bit, but whipping in the butter, the mascarpone, cheese, whatever you want, that will break it up and will make it super, super creamy, as you can see here in the picture. Polenta sous vide is great. Yogurt. If you're not cooking yogurt sous vide, shame. Yogurt is a waste of money. You can buy a quart of yogurt for $4, and I can buy a gallon of milk for $2.50. Do the math, right? And all you need to do to make yogurt is we bring it up to 85°C in a pot on the stove to denature proteins and kill any unwanted microorganisms. Then we bring it down to 43°C, and then you can go a couple different ways. You can add a yogurt culture. You can add a couple spoonfuls of your previous batch of yogurt, which is what I do. Or you could just add, if you don't have that, either of those things, you could just get a live active culture, throw that in there, cook it at 43°C for 5 hours. There you go. And you could go longer if you want a little bit more tang to it, but yogurt is one of the easiest things that you could possibly cook sous vide, except for eggs in their shell. Cook yogurt sous vide. If you like a thicker texture, you can strain it through a coffee filter or cheesecloths, what have you. Some method to strain out the whey, you'll be good. Cocktails. So this is something that I'm quite passionate about. I am a home cocktail enthusiast, and I absolutely love making drinks, which is why in my session tomorrow, we're making a toasted coconut Mai Tai to kick things off. You can do syrups. You can do infusion. You'll see here below 78C for X hours. Really, because it depends on what product it is that you're infusing into it. But just keep it below 78. Above that, you can have some bags rupture because, yeah, ethanol's going vapor phase and the bags might puff up on you. Barrel aging, accelerated barrel aging, man. Let me tell you, if you take an old fashioned as an example, or batch up a few Negronis, char some wood chips and throw them in the bag and cook it at 60C for 24 hours. You're not going to get a one-to-one representation of a barrel-aged cocktail that would take like 30 to 60 days to do. But come on, it takes a day, and you're going to get really, 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 really close. Awesome technique. In terms of syrups, I did a presentation with Alex Day of Death & Co. If you don't have the book Death & Co. or Cocktail Codex on your cocktail bookshelf, you absolutely should, especially Cocktail Codex. It really breaks down technique. But I did a talk with Alex Day 7 years ago at this point, where he took raspberries that were whole, sliced, smashed, and then cooked them at two temperatures, 55 and 65, in both simple syrup and vodka. And every single one of these end products, had a different flavor and aroma and color. It was wild. So now out of just 3 ingredients, I've got 9 possibilities, right? Or whatever the math is on that. And you can choose, okay, is it spring? Do I want something that's light and bright? Is it fall? Do I want something that's got a jammy flavor to it? So the world is your oyster here. You can do it because there's no evaporation of alcohol. And if you don't have bags, you're okay. You can do it in a mason jar. Or a fun thing that I do in the winter when I have guests come over, I'll take some wine and some mulling spices, put it in a mason jar, just drop it in a bath at like 60, and I just have like mulled wine ready to go. Open it up and then pour that out for people, and we just have a little mulled wine when they get to the house. Really easy to do. Very little aromatics are needed because alcohol will actively strip pretty much anything you put in it of color and flavor and aroma. So very little aromatics needed, and this process is much faster and consistent than relying on cold infusion. Let's say of doing like a limoncello, where you're grating lemon zest, putting it on a shelf of neutral spirit, and letting it sit forever and ever until it tastes good. You can accomplish this in hours. And reheating. So I don't think people take enough advantage of the ability to just reheat something sous vide. Now, I will say immediately there's an argument against this, which would be that by introducing a food that has been cooked traditionally and has not been pasteurized into a vacuum environment and letting it sit in there would lessen its shelf life, and I agree with that 100%. But what I do and what I'll be doing tomorrow is I have my carrot puree that I've made, and made it today. I'm gonna go ahead and bag it and throw it in my circulator while my chuck roast is coming up to temperature, and it's ready when I am. I'm gonna pour it into a pot, sauce the plate, and be done. So you have to be careful with this because again, if you've made something like mashed potatoes, let's say, and you're gonna bag them up so that you can just drop them, let's say, in boiling water or a bath at like 85 or something like that, you could shorten the shelf life of the product. But if you're within your window, I think it's a perfectly good method because you not have to worry about it scorching, reducing, or overcooking. It's perfect for sauces, purees, veg garnish, and of course proteins. Yes, you can drop your steaks in there and they're not going to overcook on you. More or less, they will if they're a lean cut. But you've got your window of excellence. Just went from the size of a beach ball to the side of a barn. So yeah, that's it. That's all I've got. Jason, do I have any other questions?
Yes, we got about 2 minutes, so we can make them quick. Ricardo Filizola says, "What cocktail codex do you suggest?"
Okay, so no, it's a book called Cocktail Codex by Alex Day. Fantastic book, and there's actually some sections on sous vide infusion in that book specifically.
And then Anthony Zizo says, is sous vide capable of replacing pressure canning universally or just with its effect specific to pickling?
Yeah, I know, not pressure canning. So pressure canning is a different process for a different set of foods with a different pH than you would normally do in a boiling water bath. So I would be careful about that. But anything that you would do in a boiling water bath, you're square to do in a sous vide bath.
Dan Tortor EC says, how long on a limoncello infusion?
It depends. It depends on that's like how long will it take me to get to get to the bar? It depends how fast I drive.
And
Right?
which part you're going to.
Exactly. So it really depends on what time or sorry what temperature you're going at. If you're not afraid of introducing a little bit more cooked flavor to the lemon zest, go hotter. Go hotter. If you want to keep like a raw, really bright flavor, go lower. Go cook it at 110. Go really low and just let it ride. It's still going to be faster than a traditional, cold infusion, but you're going to be good.
So the last question is a very important question. So you have done a lot for this super gourmet lunch coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the other lunch is Chef Villegas and his Juicy Lucy's. So I asked Chef Villegas why people should go to his session, and he said because he's more adorable. So I want to know why people should go to your lunch cook-along session tomorrow.
I would absolutely agree with that. He is more adorable than I am. But yeah, it's a level playing field. What can I tell you? I mean, Juicy Lucy's are awesome. If you've never had one, they're delicious. And of course, if you've done the meal prep for either of these, of course you should go to that session. If you've not, attend both. Go back and forth between the two, right? I think you can do that easily. Switch the session. But reasons I'm excited about my session. One, we're making a cocktail, right? You can make a burger, and I'm the first person to say I will never turn down a burger. Not one for steaks, but love my burgers. We're making alcohol. We're making drinks. So that's one reason. And it really depends on what you want to learn. So the stuff that I'll be doing is a little bit elevated technique that people have been through the videos and stuff. So it really just depends what you're in the mood for.
And a reminder that all these are being recorded, so you can always make one tomorrow and one on Sunday or Monday or whenever you want.
Yep.
So, Dave, thank you so much for a great session. I learned a ton. I always learn whenever you open your mouth. It's great. Did all of you like the session? Did you enjoy it? If so, give him some love in the comments. Let him know what you thought of it. And we just did the questions. So don't forget to check him out at Polyscience and on Instagram. Some amazing pictures on Instagram if you want to get more from Dave, as well as his crazy, just amazing looking cook-along gourmet lunch tomorrow. We're going to have our final session of the night coming up after a 10-minute break. You won't want to miss the always amazing Chef AJ Schaller. She'll be in the breakout room, which I'll paste the link in below. But make sure you check it out, and I'll see you all in 10 minutes. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.